It's all too hard to say, but I've been thinking about it non-stop for a while now, and I'm still paranoid. This happened in August of last year. I had taken a week off from work for a staycation at home. I had been living alone for the past few months after my roommate moved out, but I'd been working too much to really enjoy the space and freedom of living alone. This week was supposed to be my relaxing, me time that I never got to have. Unfortunately, it could not have been further from that. It was my second day off, and I was just chilling, watching TV, eating nice home-cooked meals, all of that kind of stuff, when I heard someone walk up to my front porch. It was midday, so I thought maybe the mailman or just some solicitor. But as I stayed sitting on the couch for a few minutes, I realized they still hadn't knocked or rang the doorbell. I never heard them walk away, so it got me curious. I got up and went over to the door to look out the peephole. Sure enough, someone was still on my porch. It was a man looking to be in his mid-30s, wearing a light sweatshirt and black jeans. He wasn't in front of the door, though. He was off to the side, looking around like he was searching for something. I thought of opening the door, but I was too nervous to confront him, so I just watched. After 40 seconds, the guy walked away quickly and got into a parked car on the road by my neighbor's house. Once I saw him drive away, I went out to investigate. Everything looked normal to me, at least everything in the area the man was looking around. I went back inside and mostly forgot about it. Within the hour, I took a nap, then made dinner a few hours later, and finally turned on a movie to finish off the night with. Sometime in the middle of it, there was a knock at the door. I paused the movie and went to see who it was. It was that man from earlier, this time standing in front of the door and seeming to be waiting for me to answer. I cracked the door open just enough to talk through. "Hey, I was hoping you'd help me out with something." I'd ask someone else, but nobody would answer, the man said right away with a big smile. "What do you need?" I asked. He went on to tell me this elaborate story about his car. Breaking down right next to my house, he pointed at it, and I immediately knew it was the same car I saw him drive away in earlier. Then he said all he needed was to use my phone to make a quick call. Knowing this was some sort of scam or something, I denied him right away and closed the door. I then looked through the peephole to make sure he left, but he didn't. His face grew excessively angry, and he banged on the door again. I yelled through the door that I'd call the cops if he didn't leave. He stood and thought for a moment, then hurried off, but not to his car. He walked around to the left side of the house. Fearing this was going to escalate, I dialed 911 and told them about the situation. Thank God I did, because not even a minute later, a sudden crash came from the dining room. I ran over to see what it was and saw that he'd smashed the window and was crawling through it. I tried to run for the garage to get in my car, but the man was quick, chasing me down half the house before grabbing me and holding me still. I fought back, kicking and punching, but he completely overpowered me. He told me through his clenched jaw to be quiet and insisted that I stop fighting while he dragged me to the front door and opened it. Once I knew what he was doing, I only started fighting harder. As he tried to bring me closer to his car, someone walking their dog on the other side of the road saw us and came running over. Before he even reached us, the man let go of me and sprinted to his car and drove away. It all happened so fast. Once the police arrived, they helped calm me down and got all the information I could give them. Apparently, it wasn't enough, though. He was never found. What's creepier is that the police think the first time I saw him come by wasn't actually his first time. They think I may have caught him collecting some sort of camera or mic he'd set up on my house to spy on me. He hasn't been back that I know of, but I planned to move out anyway just to be safe. Whatever his plan was, I don't want to risk finding out. My family and I used to go camping all the time, sometimes more than 3 or 4 times a year, even. We were camping in White Mountain National Forest, and it was our first time doing a more primitive type of camp. Usually, we went to traditional campsites like Yogi Bear Jellystone or even KOA, but this time we were in for something different. I wasn't that excited for it because I didn't think it would be as fun. I think I was 14 when this happened, around that age at least. I was still in an angsty teenage phase, if you will. I was still a good kid, just a little emotional and rough around the edges. When we got there, while my parents were setting up, my little brother and I wanted to do some exploring. We walked around for a while, but we didn't go too far as we didn't know the area and we didn't want to get lost or stray too far from camp. We talked about anything you would imagine 2 unsupervised children would talk about. I started messing with my little brother, Blair, saying things like we were lost and to watch out for the bears and the monsters. Pretty crappy, I know, but I thought it was funny. We messed with each other like that all the time, but I could tell he was actually starting to get scared, so I let him know I was only joking. I was hoping to find a cool bank offshore, like a place we could swim or fish. I found the perfect spot. He ran over to it to investigate it, and I fell in love with the scenery. It truly was beautiful. Our little kid brains loved every second of the outdoors. I knew we had been gone a while, though, and I was in charge of my brother, and I didn't want us to get in trouble. Mom wanted us back before dark anyway, and we were starting to lose daylight. So, we walked back to camp, had dinner, and did our nightly ritual with the family, like playing board games. We had a campfire and all that fun stuff until eventually, it was time for bed. Blair and I were staying in our own tent, while our mom and dad had their own as well. We got our sleeping bags, a lantern, and not much of anything else, maybe some snacks that we snuck into our tent and a DVD player to watch a movie. I fell asleep, but I remember waking up for seemingly no reason in a groggy state of mind. I turned over towards Blair and noticed he was gone. I instantly shot up. I walked out of the tent and saw him walking towards the trail that we came from earlier. "Blair, what are you doing?" I asked. "Get back to sleep before Dad finds out what you're doing." That was when I heard a noise coming from my parents' tent. I worried that I woke them up by basically yelling. I don't know how Blair got out of the tent without me noticing in the first place, but he kept walking until eventually, he was out of my sight. I ended up finding him off the trail a ways, thanks to my lantern, and he was sitting by the lake. I grabbed him by the arm and yanked him towards camp when all of a sudden, we saw a shadow. It was a man, and there was something really wrong with him. Like, seriously. He wasn't only just being a creep by staring at us, but he was clearly deranged. He was standing in the moonlight, and I could see him semi-clearly. He had long, dark hair that looked greasy and a creepy mustache. He also had some sort of tool in his hand that looked like a hammer. The way he was just standing there, all crusty-looking and staring intensely, showed me enough. He was just sitting there, mouth breathing, and he was extremely pale. He looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. I didn't stay for another second or even bother to say a word to him. I mean, come on, I was pretty sure he was a murderer. Now the chase was on. Blair wasn't as fast as me and he could barely keep up. Keep in mind, he was only 9 or 10, so his little legs could only go so fast. I grabbed his arm and practically dragged him to make him go faster. The other problem that we had was we had to get past this man to get back to camp, so we legit had to make a detour and run in a circle around him. I don't know what we would have done if it wasn't dark or if we weren't already close to home. We were pretty sure that we lost him and eventually met up with Mom and Dad. They found us out a ways from camp. I guess we were heading in the wrong direction. We kind of got lost in the panic, I guess. You'll never guess what happened after that. When we arrived back at camp, my dad's truck was gone, the only vehicle that we had out there. That man baited us off camp and he stole the truck, broke into our tents, and stole my dad's wallet and phone. Luckily, we had a walkie-talkie to call for help. The police found my dad's truck and actually arrested the man a few days later. What if we would have been out further into the woods that night? That man would have been out further into the woods that night. That man would have caught us, no doubt about it. He chased us through the woods and tried to murder us or kidnap us, one of the two. When my dad got the truck back, unfortunately, it was totaled in a drunk driving incident by the man that stole it. Man, that trip was a nightmare. Way back when I was a teenager, my friend's house was broken into. My mom was out of town, and I was at my friend Acer's house. We lived in a middle-class to upper-class neighborhood in the suburbs. Nothing super fancy, just a pretty average American home. All the houses looked similar in design, and they all had the same cookie-cutter, average-sized yard. Friend Acer lived right down the street, and I wanted to hang out over there and sleep over because I didn't like to stay home alone at night, and my mom wasn't really sure if I was ready for it yet either. Quite frankly, I was 11 years old, and I was a pretty shy and timid kid that was always sucked into the Xbox. I didn't play sports, and my dad wasn't in the picture very much. I was kind of a mama's boy, as embarrassing as that is to admit, but it's the truth. I was scared to stay home alone for a whole night. It was okay, though, because Acer's parents let me sleep over. Acer's parents, Beck and Irina, were really cool. It was a Saturday night, and they were also having company over. They were grilling out and having some drinks by the fire while Acer and I and a few of his younger cousins ran around the yard, playing catch, jumping on the trampoline, and swimming in their pool. After a few hours of being kids and bouncing off the walls, we grew tired, so we hung out inside for a bit. Then eventually, we made our way outside for an hour or so to hang out with the adults until our curfew came up. I would say around 11 o'clock, his parents made us go inside to get ready for bed. They put a movie on for all of us kids in the basement, and we set up a bunch of sleeping bags. We were watching some random movie, I don't remember what it was, but after a while, I fell asleep. I'm a light sleeper, so it wasn't a surprise when I woke up to one of the doors creeping open in the basement, along with some heavy footsteps, which sounded like they were coming from the stairs. I lifted my head up to see what was going on, but I couldn't see much. It was really dark down there, and I figured it was one of Acer's little cousins maybe just using the restroom or something, so I laid back down. I rolled over and went back to sleep, but within a matter of minutes, I woke to a pounding sound. I couldn't tell what the banging noise was, but I could tell it was coming from behind us, towards the stairs. Acer's basement was a decent size, and we were in the living room part of it, but on the other side, there was a bar and like 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. I thought the noise was coming from downstairs, but I wasn't totally sure. I thought that it might have been one of the adults and that maybe they were just grabbing something from downstairs, so I tried to close my eyes again. It was really dark down there, and I didn't expect it to be a stranger either. That, or I thought that maybe one of the adults went to the restroom as well. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't check the time or get a hold of anyone. I wasn't really sure I needed to anyways. I sat and listened for a while, though, and I couldn't hear the adults outside partying anymore. Maybe they were done for the night and coming in to check on us, I thought. You remember when you were a kid and thought there were monsters under your bed or in the closet? That fear you would feel, but deep down, you knew there was nothing to be scared about because you knew it wasn't real. Kind of felt like that. I went back to sleep one more time, but this time, what happened was far more disturbing than the previous times I'd been woken up. I woke up to a man on top of me, shaking me and trying to grab me. Other kids and Acer all ran to get the adults for help. I put up a fight, but eventually, the strange man grabbed me full on and started to run. I was being kidnapped. I did everything I could to try to get away, kicking, biting, scratching, and I even tried to dig my fingers through the man's eyes, but nothing was working. I was hopeless. That is, until Acer's dad chased him down and hit him in the head with a fire extinguisher. We both fell straight to the ground on the sidewalk, and I hit my head on the cement. Somehow, the man managed to stand up and run away, and since he had a mask on, we had no way of identifying him. I wonder if things would have ended differently had the other adults been there still. Maybe they would have chased the man down and beat his ass, and he would have got arrested, and I could actually sleep at night. But for the longest of times, I couldn't sleep. The same nightmare came to me over and over and would replay in my head. We think that the man let himself inside through the sliding glass door in the basement. I wonder how long he was standing there, planning the attack. If I would have listened to my gut, maybe things would have turned out differently, but I actually ended up with a concussion anyway. Nothing too severe, but still a concussion. Ever since that day, no matter what it is, I always listen to my intuition, and I suggest you do the same. It's always better to be safe than sorry, believe me. I'm also really glad that Acer's parents were still awake, or maybe I would have been murdered or kidnapped or even worse. This story happened to me 4 years ago when I was in my mid-22s. This whole experience will probably scar me for life, and it's still vividly imprinted in my mind. The day was the 17th of June, and I had the house to myself because my parents were on a 2-week vacation in France. It was sometime after dusk, probably around 9 p.m., and the weather was scorchingly hot. Believe me when I say I was sweating my ass off with just my tank top and shorts on. The heat was so unbearable that I allowed in some fresh air, opening all the living room and bedroom windows, planning on closing them right before hitting the hay. Now, before fast-forwarding, I must mention that I was feeling extremely exhausted. On that same day, I had taken 3 exams in the morning and played a volleyball match in the afternoon. Thus, once I ate my dinner while browsing social media in my room, I collapsed into bed without even realizing it. I woke up at around 3 a.m. to the muffled sounds of thunderbolts and a draft of cold, fresh air hitting my face. A strong wind was blowing, and all the shutters left open were noisily banging. Still drowsy, I flicked on the lamp, but the light wouldn't turn on. I checked the plug using my phone flashlight, but everything was fine. I begrudgingly climbed out of bed and looked out my bedroom window. There were menacing rainy black clouds on the horizon. A typical late-night summer storm was approaching. Given that every lamp post on the street was off, I instantly knew there had been a blackout. Phone flashlight in hand, I dizzily headed down the hallway to shut the windows before rain started pouring down. When I got to the last window, though, I noticed the mosquito net lifted up. This struck me as weird since I was quite positive I hadn't left it that way. Getting a little paranoid, I turned behind me to shine the flashlight around the living room and check my surroundings. The furniture was still in place, no drawers or closet doors left open, no decorative objects missing or moved into unfamiliar positions. Everything seemed normal. I briefly peeked my head out of my window to look outside. Trees were swaying in the howling wind, leaves shaking in a frenzy, a powerful display of nature's force, but still nothing remotely suspicious. Maybe the mechanism is faulty, or the strong wind somehow pushed it up. Against my better judgment, I convinced myself it was useless to lose sleep over it. Feeling relieved, I closed the shutters and started walking back to my bedroom, eager to get a decent night's rest. Little did I know that night would be anything but pleasant. I happened to casually turn my head to the flight of stairs connected to the attic when a vivid burst of light flashing from up there caught my eyes. I paid no mind. The attic was adorned with huge glass windows, so it was no wonder to see light spreading across the room. It was probably sheet lightning. I kept walking, subconsciously waiting for the thunder to come, but it never did. I stopped in my tracks. Given that the flash I saw was powerful and bright, the lightning had to be pretty close, so why couldn't any rumbling noise be heard? I started to think maybe it wasn't lightning. What if it was a flashlight? As doubt crept in, my heart began to race. I quickly put 2 and 2 together, and now the strange occurrence of the mosquito net left up made much more sense. The nightmarish realization hit me that an intruder could have broken into my house. At first, I panicked. Did they hear me shutting the windows? Were they carrying any weapons? Did they plan on just robbing my house, or did they also have worse intentions? Normally, I would call my parents to deal with it, but since they were away, it was all on me now. While those sickening thoughts were swirling in my mind, the distinct sound of a doorknob being twisted and turned made me instantly snap out of my catatonic state. I shot my head to face the living room entrance, and through the glass frame, I spotted a shadowy figure just a few inches outside of the front door. There was a person standing there, most likely an accomplice of the guy upstairs. Words are not enough to describe how powerless and defenseless I felt. Despite the overwhelming fear, I did my best to keep my cool, trying to make as little noise as possible. I tiptoed in the direction of the stairs leading down to the basement, which was directly connected to the garage. I figured I could safely escape from there. While I was making my descent down, still using my phone as a source of light, I dialed 911. Speaking as softly as possible, I informed the operator about what just happened. He tried to calm me down and reassured me that the police would be there in less than 10 minutes. He also added that I should lock myself in a safe room and wait for the officers to show up. I was about to reply that I could easily sneak outside through the garage door when, all of a sudden, I lost the call. I immediately checked the phone and realized that down there, I had no signal. As if that wasn't enough, I also noticed the battery was almost dead. Once I reached the basement, I nervously assessed what to do. I could try and find an emergency flashlight, but now I was so close to escaping from the house that I didn't want to waste time rummaging through the drawers. Besides, I was mindful that the intruders upstairs could have heard me. In the heat of the moment, I exited the basement as fast as I could. Nonetheless, while making my way towards the garage door, I got a feeling in my gut telling me I was being watched. I don't even know why, maybe my sixth sense had picked up on something, but I pointed my phone to illuminate the back seats of my car. And there he was, a man's face stuck to the rearview mirror. A disgusting, revolting face with dead, bulging wide eyes and a malicious yellowish grin spreading across its cheeks. He kept staring at me so intently it almost looked like he was piercing into my soul. He slid his dirty hand against the glass, waving me hello in an unnaturally slow motion. At that point, it happened. My phone battery died, turning off the flashlight and leaving me in total darkness. I felt my heart in my throat. I had never been more scared in my entire life. My whole body was quivering and shaking in fear. When I heard the car door opening, I lost it. I screamed. I screamed like a little girl as I somehow managed to unlock the garage door and bolt outside, climbing up the driveway ramp. By that time, heavy rain had started pouring down. I hopped over the gate and ran to the nearest house, yelling like a lunatic for the neighbors to rush outside. They came out in shock, and I explained to them the whole situation, almost out of breath and soaking wet. In the meantime, I heard sirens in the distance. 2 police cars rolled down the street, and I practically ran into the officer's arms, screaming that there were 3 strangers in my house. 4 agents went into my house, guns drawn, while another one took my description of the events. Those 3 men were all gone, though, and to this day, I don't think they've ever been caught. Some antiques which held some value were stolen, however, I must say it was no big deal for my family. For the remainder of the night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept tossing and turning, jumping at the slightest sounds, ruminating relentlessly on the horrific experience. But I kid you not, another chilling surprise was lying in wait. When morning came, I spotted a small piece of paper sticking out of the edge of my bed. I picked it up and went frozen stiff. The following words were written: "Bye bye beauty, you look cute when you sleep." Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.